At 14:17 on the morning of September 12, 1944, I looked out the shattered window of a stone warehouse in western Germany. 20 of us Americans were trapped inside. The streets outside swarmed with 130 Germans, every exit blocked, every building corner crawling with rifles, machine guns and artillery. Captain Reynolds paced behind me, muttering about options, about holding the line, about reinforcements that would never arrive. Like, share and subscribe for more real war stories. My name is James Walker. I'm 96 years old and I'm a retired soldier. What I'm about to tell you isn't something I ever talked about. Not to my family, not to my friends, not even to the men who fought beside me. This one happened on September 12, 1944, in a broken German city where 20 of us were trapped inside a collapsing building, surrounded by 130 enemy soldiers. We had no backup, no ammunition coming, no way out. And that night, I walked out into the dark, alone, with nothing but a pistol in my hand. I rested my hand on the pistol at my hip. A Colt 1911, worn from months in the field but perfectly reliable. I knew what had to be done. The same method that had kept me alive hunting wild boar in the forests of West Virginia, alone at night, could get us out of this. I spoke up. "I can clear a path," I said. "The method I've used in the woods. It'll work here." 2 sergeants laughed. "Your pistol against 130 Germans? That's suicide," one said. I nodded. "I know." Captain Reynolds froze, then looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. "Explain," he said. I told them about the forests, about the boars, about sound, patience, timing, and moving through darkness without fear, about knowing exactly where the target would be before it committed to its attack. The men stared at me like I had lost my mind. Maybe I had. But I had done this before. Alone at night, with nothing but a pistol, I had survived the impossible. Reynolds considered for a long moment, then finally said, "You'll have 30 minutes. The rest of you, stay silent. No movement, no sound." I nodded. I grew up in the steep hollows of Kanawha County, West Virginia. Dense forests, narrow streams, and hills so steep you had to climb on all fours to reach the ridge. My father hunted boar with a pistol. No dogs, no rifles, just the Colt and his knowledge of the dark. He taught me 2 things. The dark is not the enemy, hesitation is, and sound is everything. A boar can hear a human heartbeat, smell fear, sense movement in ways you don't expect. Most hunters move too carefully, too slowly, too afraid of the dark. The animal will sense that hesitation and it will charge, faster than your eyes can track. You stand still, let it commit, move at the last moment, and then, 1 shot, dead. I spent years mastering that. By the time I was 18, I could enter a brush-thick hollow at night, identify a boar by sound alone, close the distance to 8 feet, and fire a single fatal shot. 14 boars in one night, never more than 2 shots per animal. Timing, patience, and confidence. That was my training. By 1942, after Pearl Harbor, I enlisted. Pistol qualification was easy. Every instructor asked about my background. I told them about hunting boar in West Virginia with a pistol. They looked at me funny, then moved on. No one understood what it meant to track close and eliminate a target in total darkness using nothing but sound, movement, and timing. But I did. Now, in 1944 Germany, I had to apply the same principles in an urban battlefield. Streets instead of forests, Germans instead of boars. But the method was the same. Patience, reading the target, timing, confidence, and the knowledge that hesitation would get me killed. The warehouse was silent. I checked my equipment. Colt 1911 loaded, 4 grenades, combat knife strapped to my side. No rifle. A rifle would slow me down, make noise, and give away my position. I waited, listening. The Germans outside spoke in low tones, not fully alert. One machine gun crew to the south, two riflemen to the east, three more sweeping the street to the west. Every sound mattered. Every footstep, every whisper, every rustle of debris could betray me. At 22:01, I moved. Low to the ground, one hand on rubble, testing my steps. The dark was my ally. I used it the way I had used the dark in the West Virginia hills. Each step measured, each movement deliberate. Two men at the machine gun, a third behind them, 12 feet away. This was my bore at 8 feet. I pulled the pin on a grenade, counted to 3, and placed it at the base of the wall behind the gun. 2 steps back, waited 1 second. The explosion tore through the street. Gunfire erupted. One German down, a second scrambling, the third flung himself flat. I moved, pistol up, covering the echoes. 2 shots into the air toward the eastern rifles, creating chaos and confusion. Then back into the alley, invisible, undetected. 14 minutes later, I was back at the warehouse window. 30 Americans moved through the exit in 90 seconds, behind cover, towards safety. No casualties. Over the next 5 weeks, I repeated the method. Solo night assaults on enemy positions, machine gun nests, sniper posts, forward observer positions. Each time, the same principles: darkness, sound, patience, and the pistol. The K-bar knife and grenades were supplementary. Each operation allowed entire companies to advance that had been stalled for days. Every time, 0 casualties on my side. The army started taking notice. After-action reports praised individual initiative, close-range elimination, and advancing the company. But the language was sterile. It didn't capture what it looked like. A man moving through enemy streets the same way he had moved through dense, dark forests in West Virginia, reading the smallest sounds, predicting movement, and acting with surgical precision. I returned home in October 1945, back to the farm, back to the hills. Boars still rooted up the fields. I hunted them the same way, alone at night, with the same Colt 1911. Never spoke much about Germany. When someone asked, I said, infantry in Europe. They didn't need to know about the 130 Germans, the 20 Americans, or the 5 solo night operations. In 1978, a military historian found Captain Reynolds' reports and tracked me down. I was 60, still farming, still hunting. He asked about that night, about the warehouse, about the machine gun crew. I told him the truth. Dark streets. Germans didn't know what to listen for. Sound was my guide. Patience was my ally. Waiting the 90 seconds before moving, that was the hardest part. Once I started, the rest was simple. I lived a long life, never wounded in the dark. Every assault, every calculation, every step through the streets of Germany relied on skills honed long before the war, on the practice of patience and reading the environment. The dark is not the enemy. Hesitation is. That lesson saved 30 lives on September 12, 1944. I died in 2002, age 84. My Colt 1911, worn and reliable, remained loaded in my workshop for decades. After my passing, my son found it, cleaned it, and placed it in the National Wabdupu Museum. Beside it, a box of 45 ACP ammunition, half empty. No note, no explanation. Those who understood the dark, the sound, the patience, understood without a placard. The method, the skill, the knowledge, immortalized in steel and silence. If this story moved you the way it moved me, hit that like button. Every like helps us share more untold stories of courage, skill, and survival. Subscribe and turn on notifications. There are more forgotten acts of heroism waiting to be uncovered. Drop a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from, if you've ever hunted alone, or if someone in your family served in World War II. This story deserves to be remembered. The dark is not the enemy. Hesitation is, and in those streets of Germany on September 12, 1944, it was the difference between life and death for 20 Americans and 60 Germans who never saw it coming. If you've made it this far, then you didn't just hear a story, you felt it. Because that night wasn't about numbers. It wasn't about 130 Germans or 20 Americans trapped with no way out. It was about fear, silence, and a decision that changes everything. I was just one man, standing in the dark, knowing that if I hesitated for even a second, none of us were making it out alive. And maybe that's why this story matters, because it's not just about war. It's about what happens when you're surrounded, when there's no help coming, when every instinct tells you to wait, but you know waiting means losing. That night, I didn't have the best weapon. I didn't have the numbers. I just had a method, and the will to move forward when everyone else would freeze. And in 5 hours, everything changed. So if this story made you think, if it made you feel something, if it showed you what one decision, one moment of courage can do, then don't just scroll away. Hit that like button, because every like tells this story to someone else who needs to hear it. Subscribe, because there are more stories like this, real, forgotten moments that history almost left behind. And I want you to be here when we bring them back. Drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. Or tell me this. What would you have done in that darkness? Would you have waited? Or would you have stepped forward, knowing you might not come back? Because sometimes, survival doesn't belong to the strongest. It belongs to the one who refuses to hesitate, and that's the difference between being surrounded and finding your way out.